This Starbucks came with extra ambition and motivation today. I had them put in an extra heaping help.
There's just lemonade in this.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Ronnie Platt is the lead singer and keyboard player for one of the best known bands in rock. They are celebrating their 50th anniversary, and they'll be in Morristown April 26th at the Mayo Performing Arts Center. It's a pleasure to welcome you, Ronnie, to WDHA. Good morning.
Oh, good morning. It is a pleasure to be here.
For WDHA listeners who are actually watching this on video, you've got a bunch of cool guitars in the background there on the wall. I didn't know you played guitar. I knew you played keys. I had no idea you played guitar.
Yeah, I like to dabble in everything, actually. It's unfortunate that my house is not big enough for a set of drums, or I'd have those too, and hey, Phil, can I have a set of yours? And but no, I mean, I've always said that playing guitar, it's the best therapy in the world. When I sit down at the piano or I sit down with the guitar, even when I'm not working on anything, just to noodle, it's stress relief to me.
Playing guitar, one of the first songs that I tried to learn the finger pick pattern to was one of the Kansas songs, of course, Dust in the Wind.
Yeah.
And I think I got it down, but the problem was nobody in any band I was ever in could sing it.
Really?
Yeah, because it was just, that high voice. Maybe I'm not using a head voice properly, and it would sound real. I'd sound like a chipmunk if I used falsetto. You have the ability, obviously, to play guitar and keys, and you've got this great voice singing great songs like Dust in the Wind.
Much. you know what? Do this sometime. At the end of Dust in the Wind, when they start to fade out, start turning the volume up. And listen to Steve. He goes in the stratosphere. It's amazing. His ooh at the end of that. And you never hear that because the fade is pretty drastic. But if you turn the volume up at the end of Dust in the Wind, listen to Steve. It's absolutely amazing.
There was an interview that you and Richard and Phil did with Dan Rather not that long ago.
Yeah.
And I think it was Phil who said the first time that they heard the song, Dust in the Wind, they go, that's a hit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was so different.
Had a
I'm thinking back.
Reaction to that.
I think back because I can't think of a lot of rock bands at the time that were doing songs like that. Songs with that kind of a lyrical theme were coming from the likes of Jackson Browne and James Taylor, that singer-songwriter thing.
Oh, James
There weren't
Taylor,
a lot of rock bands doing that.
Yeah, that does sound something like a James Taylor would do, not Kansas, that, the previous album Wayward Son came off of, so it really was a stretch, but it shows the diversity of Kansas music. And something I wish a lot more people would get in, than just hearing the hits, Wayward Son, Point of No Return, Dust in the Wind. I mean, there's really such a wide variety of music genre throughout the Kansas albums throughout the years. There's really some difference from straight ahead rock and roll to something very progressive. And that's what grabbed me about the band and why I've been a diehard fan my entire life. It gave me an unfair advantage when I joined the band. I knew all the music before I joined the band.
You would actually play some of the songs in cover bands.
Oh my gosh. And not just Wayward Son and Point. I mean, I did Right Away, Windows, really some deep cut Kansas stuff that my cover bands did. And just because we like the song, and it's a pretty hard thing to balance out, because you want to do stuff that people know to grab people's attention, but you also want to do stuff that you want to do, that, interests you as a musician. So it's a fine line, but I really did some deep cut Kansas stuff back in the day in my cover bands, all the way going back to the early 80s.
So you're going to be able to tell this story far better than I can. You've already auditioned for a number of bands. You've been in some big bands. You've been on the road. You've been touring and what have you. And the opportunity comes up that maybe Kansas is going to have an opening, and you send a Facebook message to Richard. Tell our listeners about that. It's a wonderful story.
It 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 it's still surreal to me after all this time because you know, like I just said, I was such a huge Kansas fan to begin with. And a very good friend of mine, Dina Olson, who happens to be the niece of Dennis DeYoung from Styx, longtime friend, longtime fan. She knew I was a huge Kansas fan. And she texted me one day, "Did you see this?" And it was the announcement of Steve's retirement. They were in the middle of a tour. And, you know, automatically I think, oh gosh, they have to have someone, you know, seamlessly ready to go in. And so just, I mean, on a total whim, I was Facebook friends with Rich Williams, and I sent him a message. Rich, it's Ronnie from Shooting Star. Give me some consideration, because Rich had seen me sing in Shooting Star. I was in Shooting Star from 2007 to 2011, and I sent that message. That was a Wednesday. Thursday, come home from work, check my messages, and here I get a message from Rich Williams. "Ronnie, we're about to go on stage in Houston. If you get this, give me a call." And I'm like, oh my God, you know, so I call him, have a real nice conversation. He says, "Can Phil call you the next day, Friday?" I talked to Phil on Friday. They flew me to Atlanta on Monday. And so funny, you know, meeting with these guys, at first, you know, I'm like, oh my God, I'm meeting with Rich Williams and Phil Ehart from Kansas. Oh my God, that icon status they have. And that disappeared in about 1 minute, because as soon as we sat down and started talking, we talked business for maybe 5 minutes max. And the next 3 hours was telling stories and just laughing our asses off. Just all the stories we were telling back and forth. It was like 3 hours of comedy. And walking out of there, you know, I'm flying right back to Chicago. And, you know, Rich is maybe walking 10 feet in front of Phil and I. And Phil looks up at me and he goes, "Hey, you know, that went well," you know, and he's like, you got the job, but I'm going to talk to Rich, you know." And I was, you know, I never count my chickens before they're hatched. Right. So I go back to Chicago. I'm at work the next day. I'm at one of my customers. I check my email and there's a message from Phil. "Congrats, you got the job. The band is pumped." And wow, I mean, in the matter of 5 days, becoming the lead singer of Kansas, craziness. It was crazy.
What were you working? What was your job at the time?
I worked for a corrugated company, a family owned company. I'm still friends with them. They just came and saw one of our shows in Florida. And they were really just so supportive. And it was so funny when I went back to the office, because I was driving a truck for them at the time. I went back to the office and I went into John, one of the owners, and said, "John, can I talk to you for a minute?" And he's like, "Yeah, Ronnie, come on in, sit down." Like, "John, I'm sorry, I gotta leave. I gotta give you my notice." And he goes, "You ain't leaving. You're at this company till you die. You cannot leave." And I'm like, "Well, John, I'm now the lead singer of Kansas." And he's like, "What?" And he went out of his mind. He goes into the office and he's yelling to everybody, "Ronnie's the no lead singer for Kansas." He was more excited than me. But really good people to work for. They put up with my, you know, my schedule of music and stuff. And I was there for 10 years and still friends with them and a great place to work. But that's where I was when I got the job.
The Tedeschi Trucks Band has been posting some stuff on their social media, and one of the questions that they asked each member of the band was, who would you want to drive the tour bus? Do you still have your CDL?
I could, where's my wallet? Yeah, believe it or not, my CDL is still valid. And for those of you in the trucking industry, I do have a hazmat endorsement. So I do have to retest every 2 years. And even all this time, I've kept it up. Why? I don't know. You know, like I need something to fall back on now. But yeah, I've just kept it up. A friend of mine owns a trucking company, and I always thought I'd hold on to it just in case he needed, you know, help one day or something, or was really desperate. And let's see, in 10 years, that happened once.
Well, listen, if the 18 wheelers bringing the equipment into Morristown, if they break down, you're the guy they can go to.
I'm
Hey,
the guy. I am. I say this often. I am your multi-purpose lead singer.
Ronnie Platt's with us this morning at 105.5 WDHA. Kansas coming on their 50th anniversary tour to the Mayo Performing Arts Center in Morristown on April 26th. And they've just added a bunch of shows. They've extended the tour out. I think it's 23 or 24 more cities, which is just extraordinary. Congratulations on just the anticipation of this tour so far.
Why do I suddenly feel so tired? Yeah,
What
the hits keep coming.
What
Wow.
what is that like for you? I mean, you grew up, we talked about this, you grew up a fan of the band, and now you are singing some of the most iconic songs in rock to an audience that is just clamoring for this. And they're singing along with you to a song like Dust in the Wind or
Right.
Point of No Return or something like that. What is that like for you, Ronnie?
What's really scary is, playing these theaters that are 4 or 5 thousand seats, and we start Dust in the Wind, and you see 80% of the audience lift their phone because they're recording it, and you just, from my perspective, I see a sea of phones. But Chad Singer, our front of house, our sound man, he says, Ronnie, you should see it from my position because I'm looking at all the screens of those phones. So I've been meaning to have him take a picture, all this time. Uh, it's wild. Am I the luckiest guy in the world? Yeah, and I know I'm in a very unique, exclusive club with guys that have gotten jobs in just iconic bands. The first guy that comes to mind is Tommy DiCarlo, singing for Boston. And of course you've got Arnell singing for Journey and Kelly Hansen singing for Foreigner. I mean, these are the giant, super, just late 70s iconic classic rock bands. And to think that I'm in that group, it's still surreal to me. I say it all the time, but it really is. It's surreal.
I know Phil has had some health issues. How is he doing? I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about
Oh
that.
my God. He might get mad at me for saying this, but it was late afternoon, early evening on a Tuesday that he had his heart attack. And luckily, Lori, his wife, was very on the stick. I mean, what are you feeling? I got a little pain in my left arm. She immediately called 911, and they live very close to a hospital, which was really probably saved his life.
Mm-hmm.
But had a couple of stints put in, and Phil is him and I share something very unique for the music industry. We've never drank, we've never done drugs. And I think about a band from the 70s,
Mm-hmm.
early 80s, that party atmosphere. To never do that is just amazing. Uh, so he's had just a clean life, constantly healthy, constantly eating right. So that really was a big contributor to his survival. But here he has this on a Tuesday evening, and I get the call. I find out Wednesday morning. Thursday, Phil calls me, and I'm like, "What are you doing?" He goes, "Oh, I'm just home sitting on the couch." What? What? Weren't you just in the hospital 2 days ago? Then he calls me Friday. What are you doing? Oh, I'm just playing my drums. What? What? Oh, don't worry. I'm just tippy tapping on my electric set. Regardless, you're playing. You had a heart attack 3 days ago, and you're playing the drums. It's only a testament to just how healthy the guy is. And I talk to him probably 3 times a week, just to check in while he's been recovering. Of course, his body has to take time to adapt to what he went through and stuff. But he's gonna be right back. Will he go back to playing half the show like he was? Time will tell. Time will tell. But he's doing fantastic. He sounds like the old Phil, like he always has. So he's doing great.
The 50th anniversary tour for Kansas gets into Morristown April 26th at the Mayo Performing Arts Center. Ronnie, that is a beautiful building. You're going to love playing there.
Yeah.
Tickets and information online at mayoarts.org. Ronnie Platt, thank you so much for your time this morning here on WDHA.
Oh my God, my pleasure.
Best of luck with the tour.
And I'm not going to let the cat out of the bag, but we have that night, we have something very, very special. That's going to be a huge night for Kansas. So everyone in Morristown, you're in for a treat.